So, how do I solve these more complex literal equations? I'm glad you asked. It's your girl Tiffany with Tiffany's Tutoring Consulting, LLC, guiding you through these education streets. Right now, we're on literal equation road. So, I did another video and I went over literal equations using perimeter of a rectangle and area of a trapezoid. Those were pretty straightforward because it only involved the basic operations. But what happens when you have to do a little more than the basics? Let's look at it. Here we're solving for n, okay? So the problem is that n is in the numerator and the denominator of this fraction, and I don't have any numbers, but I'm going to follow the same steps and just understand that I'm going to have a lot of unlike terms. The first thing I want to do is get rid of this denominator. So I'm going to multiply n by both sides because that way I don't have to deal with the fractions. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of deal with. So times n is mn. And then when I multiply n by this fraction is going to get rid of that denominator and leave it with n minus s. All right, so a little bit more straightforward to look at here. Now I got to get the n's together. So think about when you solved equations where x was on both sides of the equation. What did you do? You moved the x's over to one side and the constants over to the other. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to move the n's together to one side. So I'm going to move this n over to the left, instead of moving the mn over, because if I move the mn over, I'm just going to have more steps. So I'm going to do inverse operations. Now, when I put this minus n, you might be like, whoa, what happened? What happened? Here's the negative here. Yes, this is a subtraction here, but it's in front of the s, not in front of the n. This is a positive n. So this is plus n. So the opposite of addition is subtraction. So I'm going to use the subtraction property of equality because remember, guys, I need for it to cancel out. So n minus n is 0. Bring down my minus s. Big issue I see is kids don't bring down that minus s. You have to bring that down or your equation will be incorrect. So I have mn minus n. This is not mn squared. Please do not put these together. You cannot add or subtract unlike terms. So now I have to get that n by itself. So what can I do? I'm going to go ahead and factor. Okay. When I factor, I'm taking it in out. And it's like kind of division, right? So I'm going to factor because it's the opposite of the distributive property. Okay. So when I take that out, I get m that's left. And then n divided by n is 1. And I have that equal minus s now, or negative s. Now, for those who are in Florida in public or charter schools, your child learned how to do distributive property and factoring in sixth grade with the newer benchmarks. So again, that's something they have done. All right, let's keep it going. Again, to recap, I'm factoring to take an n out, and then I have n parentheses n minus 1 equals negative s. N is almost by itself, is ready to boot everything out. What is it going to boot out? I'm glad you asked. The m minus 1. Okay, so I'm going to divide both sides by m minus 1 because remember, the n is being multiplied by the m minus 1. Divide both of those by m minus 1. Boom, that cancels out to 0. I'm left with n, and I have minus s over m minus 1. I'm going to drop parentheses because that's the only term that's going to be two terms that are going to be down there in the denominator. Again, a lot of work, but not too bad. We use the properties of inverse operations, the properties of equality. We also did a little factoring. If you have any questions or any concerns, put it down in the comments below. I'll talk to you guys later. All right, peace.